Hidden in forests across France and Germany lie the remains of one of the most ambitious weapons projects of World War II.
This is just missile.
Top secret Nazi testing centers. Subterranean missile factories.
And you can see here this amazing large tunnel. Looks like they left in a hurry.
A vast network of deadly launch sites.
Hitler is hoping that this new terror weapon will bring Britain to its knees.
We will retaliate with all our power.
This is the incredible story of the world's first cruise missile. A terror bomb that would change the face of history and lead to a revolution in military hardware.
That machine could be falling on you with a ton of explosives on board.
The V1. The biggest construction projects of World War II, ordered by Hitler to secure world domination. Now they survive as dark reminders of the Führer's fanatical military ambition. These are the secrets of the Nazi megastructures. It's the 13th of June, 1944, 1 week after D-Day. Colonel Max Vachtel is about to launch the Nazis' newest secret weapon, the V1 missile. Across northern France, regiments are primed. Among them is teenage airman Joseph Esser. His unit and 54 others like it are ready to fire the unmanned flying bombs at London. Hitler is relying on them to turn the tide of war for Nazi Germany.
Stand back, everyone!
Today, the relics of the V1 program still litter the French countryside. Battlefield archaeologist Dr. Tony Pollard is exploring their ruins.
It's across iron rails that would have sat on top of these plinths that a V1 missile would have been launched, kicking off back there, its engine sputtering into life. And you can imagine the thing rocketing over my head, careering off this thing and shooting out over those fields directly toward London.
The V1 is the prototype of two of the most lethal weapons in today's arsenal. The cruise missile and the unmanned drone.
What we have for the first time in military history is the ability of one nation to launch missiles at another across a very long distance without causing themselves any risk whatsoever.
The story of the V1 begins before the war, in the summer of 1939. Hitler has been in power for 6 years and is intent on expanding the Third Reich. A massive rearmament program is underway. Part of Hitler's plans is a revolution in military technology. He gives his forces free rein to develop groundbreaking weapons. In Berlin, the Luftwaffe turned to the pioneering work of one man. Eccentric engineer Fritz Goslau. He's working on the revolutionary concept of unmanned planes.
What a success!
His remote-controlled aircraft provides the Luftwaffe with an ingenious training tool. The plan is to use this drone as target practice for anti-aircraft gunners. They can shoot it down with no risk to human life. An idea ahead of its time.
In 1939, Fritz Goslau is working on what we today would call a UAV, an unmanned aerial vehicle. It's a pilotless drone. I mean, amazingly highly advanced idea. Germany's status in world engineering is absolutely a complete powerhouse, and particularly in terms of aviation. So there is an environment, an atmosphere there in which kind of sort of madcap, off-the-wall ideas are absolutely encouraged.
Goslau's timing couldn't be better. War is on the horizon. On the 1st of September 1939, Hitler invades Poland, and World War II begins. German forces sweep eastward. Their blitzkrieg tactics are winning the war. Goslau's drones are training Luftwaffe gunners, but he's eager to play a bigger part in the war. He has an idea to turn his training tool into a lethal weapon.
Goslau is starting to realize that actually he's onto something here. He's got an unmanned aircraft, but why not fill that aircraft with explosives and actually send it over as a weapon? So it completely changes his way of thinking about what he's got.
Meine Herren,
My generals, many thanks for coming.
vielen Dank herzukommen.
Goslau pitches the idea of a combat drone, codenamed Deep Fire.
Es fahrt mit der
Guided by a chase plane, this unmanned aircraft would travel deep behind enemy lines, carrying a 1-ton bomb.
ganz fertig. Kaputt.
Once it's delivered its payload, it can return to base and load up again.
Deep Fire is very enthusiastically received by the Luftwaffe, who are very excited by projects such as these. That's super advanced that no other combatant in the war has.
On the 9th of February 1940, Hitler sends out a decree. All experimental programs must be stopped immediately. The war has started well for the Nazis. Hitler believes it won't last long, so there's no need for expensive, unproven ideas. Goslau's design is officially scrapped by the Luftwaffe.
Goslau may have been knocked back with his unmanned aircraft, but he very quickly turns his attention to another exciting project the Luftwaffe is keen to back, and that is the development of pulsed jet technology.
Planes are vital to the Nazi war machine, but their piston engines are expensive and time-consuming to build. They ask Goslau for a cheap and fast alternative. On his radar is the pulse jet. Fighter jet expert Dr. Mike Pavelek is exploring a Nazi weapons workshop in northern Germany. The remains of Goslau's inventions can still be found there today.
This is fantastic. This is the old pulse jet. It doesn't look like much now. It's all rusty and broken apart. But in 1939, this was actually very, very high technology. This pulse jet works on very simple principles of combining fuel and air to produce thrust.
Fuel is injected into a spherical compartment. Here it mixes with air and ignites. The resulting explosion creates a jet of hot gases. When directed out of the exhaust tube, this creates the thrust needed to drive an aircraft forward.
The Argus pulse jet engine was very appealing for two reasons. First off, it was incredibly powerful. Secondly, it was very cheap and easy to build. Pulse jet engines represent a sea change in military aviation technology.
April 1941. Goslau has a working pulse jet engine, but with a major flaw. It self-destructs after a few hours, so it's no use in piloted aircraft. But Goslau thinks it may be perfect for his unmanned drones. the combination could create his dream, a flying bomb.
Goslau is primarily an engine designer at Argus, and what he lacks is the know-how on airframes. He needs that combination of airframe technology and engine technology, bring them together, and that's how he's going to realize his dreams and ambitions for an unmanned flying bomb.
Fate would step in the form of flying champion turned engineer Robert Lusser.
Robert Lusser, who is an airframe designer from the aircraft manufacturer Fiesler, visits Argus and by chance happens to come into conversation with Goslau. And Goslau starts telling him about his plans for this unmanned flying bomb.
Dr. Lusser, this is new, completely new.
Goslau draws him this little sketch of how he imagines his flying bomb's going to look like with 2 engines on the wings. And Lusser looks at it and goes, yeah, maybe, but actually, what about this? And puts the engine straight into the fuselage.
Just one. Why not try this?
And it's this marriage of the two, of the airframe designer with the engine designer, that really gets the V1 project going.
This chance meeting results in the design of the V1 and an engineering partnership that would change the face of war forever.
Mașini clasice și vieți schimbate. Echipa de salvatori revine cu aceeași nobilă misiune. De data asta va fi și mai complicat.
Look at it, it's half a car. And the other half here, the engine is falling to pieces.
De la superbele anilor 60 la minunile tehnicii anilor 80. Tot mai departe. SOS Mașini clasice. În fiecare luni la 9 pe National Geographic Channel.
Doamnă Chivo, ți-am adus învățăcei să scoți matauntul din ei.
Prea acru. Prea tare. Prea alb. Prea bun, prea ca la țară. Unt de la Covalac de țară. Prea bun, prea ca la țară.
Asta numesc ei pop art.
Oh, zei, suntem pierduți. Cerule, face și espresso.
Cine face? Și latte macchiato e o capodoperă.
Și poți câștiga și o excursie la New York.
Serios? Cum?
Cumpără orice aparat Nescafé Dolce Gusto sau 3 cutii diferite de capsule și înscrie numărul bonului fiscal prin SMS sau pe Facebook. Poți câștiga 100 de accesorii pe zi sau chiar o excursie la New York.
Raffaello de glas inimii tale. E cutia cu mi-e dor de tine, cu te iubesc atât de mult. Cutia cu gânduri bune pe care le oferi celor dragi când vrei să știe că îi porți în suflet. O inimă de migdală învelită într-o cremă delicată cu fulgi ușori de cocos. Raffaello, mai presus de cuvinte.
Iepurașul de ciocolată Kinder Paște cel mai fericit la tine acasă, nu la magazin.
Să începem vizionarea din sufragerie.
Cerealele Lion. O combinație unică de ciocolată și caramel. Plăcerea care te dezlănțuie. Cerealele Lion. O plăcere dezlănțuită.
Nimic incitant? Privește aici. Umplutură de praline cu arahide, fină și savuroasă, acoperită cu o cremă bogată de cacao și învelită într-un aluat pufos. Incitant? Noul 7 Days Peanut. Incitant. Echipa de depanare s-a întors. Acum acționează pe o zonă extinsă, cu mare faimă pentru pericol. La șosele noi, probleme noi. Un alt drum de coșmar. Autostrada Iadului. În fiecare joi la 10 pe National Geographic Channel.
wider events in Europe soon turned the idea into a reality. The 28th of March, 1942. The German city of Lübeck is carpet-bombed by the Allies. The city is the first in Germany to face the full force of the RAF, who specifically targets civilian areas. Over 1,000 Germans are injured or killed.
The bombing of Lübeck, an ancient German city that has its heart destroyed, is a real shock to both Hitler and the German High Command. Hitler is incensed and demands an immediate response.
Hitler orders retaliatory strikes on Britain. But after a series of defeats to the RAF, the Luftwaffe lacked the bombers to give the Führer the revenge he demands.
The Luftwaffe are immediately kind of wondering what they can do because they simply don't have the bomber force. But actually, the answer lies right underneath their noses. And of course, it's the unmanned flying bomb that Lusa and Goslau have been developing.
On the 19th of June, the weapon is given high priority by the Luftwaffe. They order construction of a secret prototype. The flying terror bomb is on the brink of becoming a reality. August 1942. Testing of the V1 missile is officially relocated to Peenemünde West, the Luftwaffe's top-secret research and development center. Concealed from the Allies on a remote island in northern Germany, it's the perfect place to develop the missile.
In 1942, the V1 missile project is moved here to Peenemünde. Hitler's other vengeance weapon, the V2 rocket, is already under development, so there are thousands of engineers and scientists already working here under the strictest secrecy.
Goslau and Lusa are still working on a prototype V1, but there's a glaring problem. How to launch a flying missile without a pilot. The team begin work on a ramp to try and catapult the missile into the air.
This is the platform for the launch system. I find it interesting that the metal and concrete is still here from 70 years ago. Right here was where the ramp started.
The final design uses a steam-propelled piston. When fired, it'll shoot through the ramp. The V1 is attached directly to the piston. Finally, a steam generator, rigged to produce a high-pressure gas explosion, is locked into position.
They'd flip the switch, and the steam would be generated. The catapult plug would force the V1 off the end of the ramp towards the Baltic.
In under a second, the piston accelerates the V1 to a staggering 250 miles per hour. This gives the missile the momentum it needs to take off. But there's still a way to go before the V1 is fully functional. January 1943. The tide of war is turning against Nazi Germany. They're losing to the Allies in North Africa. And in the east, the invasion of Russia has ground to a halt. Hitler is looking for a miracle, and the V1 might just be the answer. Goslau and Lusa believe their new invention is exactly what the Führer needs. Now, it's time to prove it.
Hurry up! Is everything okay?
Yeah.
Air pressure?
Check!
Gyroscope?
Check!
Ignition?
Check!
Good. Prepare for firing.
Hitler himself comes to Peenemünde to watch one of the next tests. The tide is just beginning to turn against the Germans, and what he's hoping is that this new terror weapon will bring Britain to its knees.
For Goslar and Lucer, it's a one-off chance to show the Führer their amazing invention.
3, 2, 1, go, go!
The V1 launch is a disaster. The missile crashes immediately. Lucer and Goslar's V1 test couldn't have gone worse. But Hitler desperately needs new technology to turn the tide of the war. He gives the missile his seal of approval. The pressure is now on Goslar and Lucer to get the V1 missile operational. That means men need to be trained to operate it.
Every weapon needs manpower to launch it, and so a new regiment is instigated specifically to man and operate the flying bomb.
June 1943. Troops are drafted from across the Luftwaffe to join a new secret regiment. The man chosen to lead them is hardened war veteran Colonel Max Wachtel.
Meine Herren, Sie sind hier.
Gentlemen, you are here for a mission of utmost importance to the fatherland.
Und ich glaube, es wird uns
And it will be an honor for us to carry out this duty.
Diese Mission zu erfüllen.
Colonel Max Wachtel. He's a tough, uncompromising artilleryman from the First World War. He's joined the Luftwaffe in 1936 and has made a real reputation for himself. So he's the perfect choice. He's loyal, he's uncompromising, and they know he's going to get the job done.
Wachtel's regiment is drawn from men from all across Germany, veterans, brand new recruits, some that fought on the Western Front, some that have fought on the Eastern Front. They're brought here to work on this top-secret project, the V1 missile.
Among them is 18-year-old airman Joseph Esser.
Ich möchte Sie darauf hinweisen, dass jeder
Let me stress that any breach of your oath to secrecy will result in transfer to a concentration camp or death.
Esser's team are among the first to see the secret flying bomb. He records the moment in his diary.
We were given special security clearance to enter the secret research station. There I saw it, the machine they called the V1. I thought we had to fly it, but then we were told that it's a missile, a secret vengeance weapon.
On the outskirts of Peenemünde, Esser and the team begin an intense training schedule.
It was in this forest where Wachtel's regiment trained. The high-technology weapons system needed highly trained professionals to be able to launch it. Without the men, the machine was nothing. They built 3 practice launch ramps in the forest. This is one of them. You can see the front end would have been down there where they loaded the V1 on.
Under Wachtel's direction, the team step up their firing trials.
This was extremely dangerous work. They were using very volatile chemicals in the launch process. The V1s themselves tended to explode on the ramp.
Esser prepares the V1s for launch, but the system still has teething problems, as he recalls in his diary.
After the bomb was prepared, we ran and hid. You just didn't know what might happen.
Get back, everyone!
They have no techniques or procedures. They have to invent how they put this thing into the air.
Pressure is rising. The regiment is expected to be operational within a few months. Hitler is depending on Max Wachtel. While Wachtel and the engineers struggle to get the V1 campaign operational, the Nazi war machine receives a huge setback. In July 1943, the Allies bomb Hamburg.
Over 3 consecutive nights, more than 3,000 bombers hit Hamburg. This is one of Germany's biggest cities, not to mention ports, and the ancient heart of it is absolutely destroyed.
The raid kills over 50,000 Germans.
This is a massive psychological blow for both Hitler and the Nazi high command as well.
Only by air can they terrorize our homeland. But let me assure you, gentlemen, we are developing ways to end these terror attacks for good. We will soon retaliate with all our power.
Hitler is relying on Max Wachtel to deliver a revenge strike, but the V1 is far from ready. Despite this, he orders 5,000 to be built by the end of 1943 to fire at England.
National Geographic. O aventură de proporții epice în univers.
And it all began with Hubble.
A început ca un dezastru urmat de o salvare in extremis. Programul Hubble Călătoria Cosmică celebrează 25 de ani ambițioși. Iar oamenii din spațiu cercetează secretele universului. Spațiu, ultima frontieră. Din 25 aprilie pe National Geographic Channel.
Foresto protejează câinii și pisicile împotriva paraziților externi timp de 7-8 luni, fiind o soluție comodă pentru proprietar.
Încearcă acum noul Foresto.
Impresionant, nu-i așa?
Mesdames et messieurs, je m'appelle Jean-Luc. Aujourd'hui, vă voi prezenta opera de grație a predecesorilor mei. Pâine cu cartofi, pain aux pommes de terre. Avem cea mai bună făină, apă, sare et bien sûr cartofi. Și après, une heure à cuptor. Ce faci, visezi? Nu? Luăm o pâinică. Et voilà, gustul chef gourmand al pâinii cu cartofi.
Raffaello de glas inimii tale. E cutia cum e dor de tine, cu te iubesc atât de mult. Cutia cu gânduri bune pe care le oferi celor dragi când vrei să știe că îi porți în suflet. O inimă de migdală învelită într-o cremă delicată cu fulgi ușori de cocos. Raffaello, mai presus de cuvinte.
Iepurașul de ciocolată Kinder Paște cel mai fericit la tine acasă, nu la magazin.
Asta numesc ei pop art.
Oh, zei, suntem pierduți. Cerule, face și espresso.
Cine face? Și latte macchiato e o capodoperă.
Și poți câștiga și o excursie la New York.
Serios? Cum?
Cumpără orice aparat Nescafé Dolce Gusto sau 3 cutii diferite de capsule și înscrie numărul bonului fiscal prin SMS sau pe Facebook. Poți câștiga 100 de accesorii pe zi sau chiar o excursie la New York.
Nimic incitant? Privește aici. Umplutură de praline cu arahide, fină și savuroasă, acoperită cu o cremă bogată de cacao și învelită într-un aluat pufos. Incitant? Noul 7 Days Peanut. Incitant.
Hey guys, I'm Jason Silva, host of Brain Games, which returns with all new episodes. We'll explore everything, from money to morality. What? This is actually kind of blowing my mind. To memory. Go! To good old-fashioned common sense. You may think you have the answers. Sometimes, your brain has a mind of its own.
Îți joacă mintea? Azi la 9 pe National Geographic Channel.
Totul începe cu un sunet. Sunetul unui cec gras de 500 de kilograme în cârlig. Dar oricine a dat la ton știe, se prinde sau s-a dus, cât ai clipi. Depinde cât ești de iute de mână. La pescuit de ton. Premiera joi la 9 pe National Geographic Channel.
The summer of 1943, and Hitler's first vengeance weapon goes into mass production. But the V1 only has a range of 130 miles. They'll need to be launched from northern France. In September, construction begins on 100 launch sites across Normandy and the area around Calais. One of the most impressive is Hazebrouck. Its haunting ruins still survive today.
This is just missile. This is the business end of the entire operation, the launch ramp. And there's no mistaking it. It's unbelievable. And what we're seeing here are the blast walls that would have protected the ramp within. And that would have been a superstructure coming out towards us. The key factor is that this has to have that line of sight. It's like a rifle pointed at London. It's on a ridge, so it's elevated from the ground around it, but it's set aside from the forest. Everything else, all the support buildings, are hidden away in the forest.
The launch site contains everything the V1 regiments need to fire the weapon. There are nearly 20 concrete structures, including buildings to store and assemble the missiles, bunkers to house the detonators, and blockhouses to support the 65-strong crew. In late 1943, under pressure to deliver an operational V1 regiment, Colonel Vactel moves his men into the top-secret launch sites in northern France. In their ranks is Joseph Esser, who is posted near Lille.
Throughout the autumn, my job was just boring guard duty. It was hardly what I signed up to. It was a site like this that Esser arrived at. The facilities were all here ready, but the frustrating thing was that there were no missiles. There was a problem with supply. But once they started to arrive, the plan was initially to store them in this building. Wow. This is an 80-meter-long bunker, and its function was to store the missiles. They would have been in here nose to tail, 10 of them, one end to the other, with their wings folded up before they're assembled.
For most of their length, these buildings are straight as a die, but when you get to one end, they start to curve around. And it's said that's to protect from bomb blast if bombs are dropped on them. If you see them from above, they look like skis laid on their side, and they become known as ski structures.
By the end of 1943, the Luftwaffe has lost control of the skies over France. All the launch sites are now vulnerable to Allied aerial reconnaissance. It doesn't take long for the RAF to spot the strange ski-shaped buildings.
So what we're looking at here for the Germans is a major design flaw. And as soon as the Allies see these structures, they know that something unusual is happening, and something potentially very dangerous.
The distinctive missile bunkers give away the launch sites. But the secrecy of the V1 program means the Allies have no idea what they're for. It takes an aerial recon photo of a launch ramp at Peenemünde for them to make the connection.
The place we're standing and this photograph are very significant in the history of the V1, because this is where the Allies took a series of photographs that actually had a picture of the V1 on the launch ramp. They finally put two and two together. The launch ramps were for V1s aimed directly at London.
Allied air raids on the sites in northern France begin in earnest. 18-year-old airman Joseph Esser is now in mortal danger.
Incoming!
The Allies drop over 120,000 tons of bombs on the Nazis' V-weapon sites.
The impact of those Allied air raids is still plain to see in the forest, which is pockmarked with huge bomb craters. Look at the size of this one. And this must be a 500-pound bomb that's landed here. All over the site, there are lumps of concrete where buildings have been hit by bombs raining down.
Nearly all of the 100 V1 launch sites are heavily bombed, long before they become operational.
The V1 program is facing catastrophe, and an entire rethink is required. The crews have to evacuate these sites, and what they need to do is regroup and rethink and come up with an entirely new strategy.
At his headquarters in France, the pressure is building on Regiment Commander Max Wachtel. He has no idea how the Allies discovered the V1 sites.
Wachtel realizes that the secret of the V1 missile is out, and he's absolutely paranoid that the French resistance are watching his every move. So he takes some extreme measures.
Wachtel changes tactics, abandoning the original launchers and constructing 130 small, carefully concealed launch sites. The relics of one are buried in the forest at Bois de Saint-Rémy.
I could do with a machete and some of this stuff. One, two, three, four. Maybe more over here. Looks as though it's lined in the right direction. This is the end of the ramp. These concrete plinths are all that's left of the V1 launch pad that was here.
The new sites consist of 2 or 3 permanent structures heavily camouflaged in dense woodland. The biggest change is the launch ramp. The plan is to deliver it in prefabricated sections that are only assembled at the last minute. This keeps the chances of the Allies detecting the site to a minimum.
We've got the essential ramp, but it's as simple as possible, very quickly erected in the days before a launch. The rest of the site is just dispersed and small scale. There'd need to be some sort of storage for the missiles, but we're not looking at these massive long sheds where dozens of these things can be kept at any one time. We're really looking at something more akin to a mobile artillery battery here.
But hiding the launch sites from the Allies isn't enough for the increasingly paranoid Vachtel. Concerned that the French resistance are following him and spying on his top-secret missile program, he goes undercover.
For one thing, he changes his name, ditches his uniform, feigns a false armor. He's doing anything he possibly can to get the program back on track.
Disguising his name and appearance, Vachtel becomes the one-armed Martin Wolf.
And so the Germans here, I think, have played a blinder. They're working really intelligently with what is really a very adverse situation.
With Vachtel and the launch sites under cover, now only the V-1s themselves need hiding from the ever-watchful Allies. Storage of the missiles is moved to a series of quarries and tunnels. Across Europe, mass production also moves underground. In eastern France, the Nazis convert an iron mine into a top-secret V-1 construction plant at Thiersele. Fortification specialist Arthur van Beveren is exploring the subterranean factory.
Wow, look at this place. Huge, to make room and space for trains. All wiring on the walls. Huge steel doors leading into the tunnel. The original mine was 220,000 square meters, and the Germans used 60,000 for their V1 factory. And you can see here this amazing large tunnel which leads right into the mountain. It's about 7 meters high, and it was enlarged by the Germans to provide space for trains and trucks and the V-weapon itself.
Before V1 production could begin, the narrow mine shafts have to be widened and strengthened. The work is carried out by prisoners.
Forced laborers from East and Central Europe were brought in by the Germans to do this work, and it was hard work in a cold, damp environment. To work here for months on end, it must be awful. Looks like they left in a hurry.
The Nazis build workshops for the construction of V1 parts deep within the mountain. Drills, presses, and welding stations are installed, and full V1 manufacturing begins.
Prisoners were cherry-picked for their special qualities. They were specialists on metalworking.
The prisoners are forced to work day and night to build the missiles Hitler demands.
The amount of engineering that went into the V1 project was impressive, but a lot of people forget the human cost. Stories go that when about 30 Russian women were working there, the tunnel collapsed and they are still buried underneath the rubble.
Mașini clasice și vieți schimbate. Echipa de salvatori revine cu aceeași nobilă misiune. De data asta va fi și mai complicat.
Look at it, it's half a car. And the other half here, the engine is falling to pieces.
De la superbele anilor 60 la minunile tehnicii anilor 80. Tot mai departe. SOS Mașini clasice. În fiecare luni la 9 pe National Geographic Channel.
Să începem vizionarea din sufragerie.
Cerealele Lion. O combinație unică de ciocolată și caramel. Plăcerea care te dezlănțuie. Cerealele Lion. O plăcere dezlănțuită.
Bun, azi învățăm o nouă formulă. Știe cineva ce înseamnă vopsea la puterea a doua? Exact, acoperire mai mult.
Acoperă extra. Și? Se descurcă? Se descurcă?
Au învățat mecanic că îi ajută vopseaua. Îi ajută Casabela.
Raffaello, dă glas inimii tale. E cutia cum e dor de tine, cu te iubesc atât de mult. Cutia cu gânduri bune pe care le oferi celor dragi când vrei să știe că îi porți în suflet. O inimă de migdală învelită într-o cremă delicată cu fulgi ușori de cocos. Raffaello, mai presus de cuvinte.
Iepurașul de ciocolată Kinder Paște cel mai fericit la tine acasă, nu la magazin.
Asta numesc ei pop art.
Oh, zei, suntem pierduți. Cerule, face și espresso.
Cine face? Și latte macchiato e o capodoperă.
Și poți câștiga și o excursie la New York.
Serios? Cum?
Cumpără orice aparat Nescafé Dolce Gusto sau 3 cutii diferite de capsule și înscrie numărul bonului fiscal prin SMS sau pe Facebook. Poți câștiga 100 de accesorii pe zi sau chiar o excursie la New York.
Nimic incitant? Privește aici. Umplutură de praline cu arahide, fină și savuroasă, acoperită cu o cremă bogată de cacao și învelită într-un aluat pufos. Incitant? Noul 7 Days Peanut. Incitant. Aceasta este cea mai emoționantă poveste spusă vreodată. Filmată fără trucaje sau efecte speciale, în cel mai amplu și sălbatic decor. Povești cu farmec, în care realitatea bate ficțiunea. 24 de ore pe zi, viața sălbatică, cel mai frumos spectacol. Redescoperă-ți dragostea pentru natură pe Nat Geo Wild. Echipa de depanare s-a întors. Acum acționează pe o zonă extinsă, cu mare faimă pentru pericol. La șosele noi, probleme noi. Un alt drum de coșmar. Autostrada Iadului. În fiecare joi la 10 pe National Geographic Channel.
National Geographic. O aventură de proporții epice în univers. A început ca un dezastru urmat de o salvare in extremis. Programul Hubble Călătoria Cosmică celebrează 25 de ani ambițioși. Iar oamenii din spațiu cercetează secretele universului. Spațiu, ultima frontieră. Din 25 aprilie pe National Geographic Channel.
By May 1944, Hitler is finally satisfied that everything is ready for a strike against Britain. Hesse's regiment is in position and awaiting Wachtel's order to fire. It'll come under the codename Polar Bear, in German, Ice Bear.
The V1s may be ready, but the Allies strike first. They take Hitler and the Germans completely by surprise by landing on the Normandy beaches.
On the 6th of June 1944, 150,000 Allied troops land on the coast of France in the D-Day invasion. Hitler needs a decisive counterstrike against the Allies. The time has come for Wachtel to break cover. He casts off his disguise and mobilizes his men.
All units to prepare immediately for the attack. Give me the status of all the Normandy sites. Launches are to be made ready for action. Thanks.
Across France, the launch ramps begin arriving. Missiles are moved from the factories and storage depots, arming the sites.
In the hours leading up to the launch, this would have been an absolute hive of activity. There would have been men everywhere. They'd have still been building the launch ramp. Last pieces bolted into place.
Essa is busy readying the missiles for launch. The moment to put his training into action has finally arrived.
The missiles would be arriving at the reception center. There they'd be prepared, the wings fitted, the gyros would be fitted, everything checked for that last final launch.
On the 12th of June, 1944, just 6 days after D-Day, Wachtel is ready.
After months of waiting, the hour has come for us to open fire. The Führer and the fatherland look to us. And it's now down to us to ensure our crusade ends with victory.
It's finally time to fire Hitler's vengeance weapon.
Long live our Führer Adolf Hitler. Sieg Heil!
Across northern France, V-1 launch teams spring into action to begin the aerial bombardment of London. Airman Joseph Essa is in position. His job? To fire the flying bomb. At 4 a.m., Colonel Wachtel gives the order.
Eisbär! 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 Eisbär!
Get back, everyone!
Through the night, the regiment unleash missiles at the unsuspecting British public.
Essa's crew do pretty well on the night. They get 2 missiles away. The problem is that across the regiment, they only get 10 missiles off. And only 4 of those missiles make it as far as the English coast.
A single V-1 strikes London. The explosion kills 6 people, injuring 30. It's not the decisive strike Hitler was expecting.
After that first disappointing launch, the regiment really gets its act together. And on the 15th and 16th of June, just a few days later, they get 244 missiles in the air. 73 of those land on London to devastating effect. This is what Hitler was hoping for.
The growl of Goslow's pulse jet engine signals the arrival of a V-1. On reaching London, it starts its dive. This cuts the fuel to the engine, leaving the missile to fall in haunting silence.
But it was when that engine cut out that you knew the danger had really arrived, because that machine is at that point falling from the sky, and it could be falling on you with a ton of explosives on board.
In total, 10,500 missiles are launched at Britain. In the space of 10 weeks, over 5,000 Londoners are killed. By mid-August 1944, 2 months after the first V-1 attacks, the Allies break out of Normandy. The Nazis are in retreat, including Wachtel and Essa.
The V-1 program was incredibly ambitious. It did succeed in raining terror down on London, but it failed to turn the tide of the war in Hitler's favour. By the time the first missiles had been fired, the Allies had already landed in France. It was just too little too late.
After the war, Airman Joseph Esser returns to Germany to live a quiet life in a town by the Rhine. Colonel Max Wachtel becomes the manager of Hamburg Airport. Lusser and Goslau both continue careers in engineering. Goslau develops motorbikes, while Lusser designs downhill skis. It's their work on the V1 that leaves a lasting legacy. The missile is the prototype for two of the most lethal weapons in the current military arsenal: the unmanned drone and the guided cruise missile. In spite of its flaws, the V1 marks the dawn of modern warfare.